The airport terminal buzzed with the restless energy of hundreds of travelers moving in every direction. Rolling suitcases rattled across polished floors. Flight announcements echoed overhead, and in the middle of it all stood a man who looked completely calm despite the storm about to surround him. Marcus Carter adjusted the strap of his leather carry-on and checked the time on his watch. 6:42 p.m. His flight to London was scheduled to board in less than 20 minutes. He had arrived early, passed security without issue, and spent the last hour quietly answering emails. To everyone around him, he looked like any other traveler waiting for a long international flight. A tall black man in his early 40s. Simple navy blazer, white shirt, dark jeans, nothing flashy, nothing that screamed wealth or power. But Marcus Carter wasn't just another traveler. He was the CEO of Northbridge Global, a technology and infrastructure company that had quietly grown into one of the most powerful logistics networks in North America. His company managed airport software systems, supply chain technology, and digital infrastructure used by dozens of airlines around the world. Ironically, including the one he was flying tonight, Marcus walked toward the boarding gate with an easy confidence that came from years of navigating rooms filled with executives, politicians, and investors. But the moment he stepped into the boarding lane, something shifted. "Sir." The voice was sharp. Marcus turned. A security officer stood in front of him with crossed arms. "Where do you think you're going?" Marcus blinked, slightly surprised. "Boarding." He held up his boarding pass. The officer didn't even look at it. "This lane is for priority passengers only." Marcus nodded politely. "Yes, that's correct." He showed the boarding pass again. "First class. Seat 1A. The officer frowned, then glanced at Marcus from head to toe. "Yeah, I'm going to need you to step out of the line." A few nearby passengers turned to watch. Marcus remained calm. "I believe there may be a misunderstanding." The officer gestured toward the waiting area. "Sir, the regular boarding line will open shortly. You can wait over there." Marcus glanced at the sign above the lane. "First class and executive members." He slowly raised the boarding pass again. "I am in the correct line." Before the officer could respond, a gate agent walked over. A young woman wearing the airline uniform and a tight, impatient expression. "What's the problem?" The officer pointed casually toward Marcus. "This gentleman seems confused about where he belongs." The words hung in the air longer than they should have. Marcus felt several people staring now. Still, his voice remained calm. "I'm not confused," he said quietly. "I'm boarding my flight." The gate agent reached for the boarding pass. But instead of scanning it, she stared at Marcus. Then she glanced at the pass again. Her eyebrows lifted. "Did someone give this to you?" Marcus frowned slightly. "I checked in online this morning." The agent tilted her head skeptically. "This is a first-class international ticket." "Yes." Her lips tightened. "Sir, these seats cost several $1,000s." Marcus nodded. "I'm aware." A man standing nearby chuckled quietly. Someone behind him whispered. Marcus felt the shift in the atmosphere. The assumption. The judgment. The silent question hanging in the air. The gate agent crossed her arms. "I'm going to need you to step aside while we verify this ticket." Marcus exhaled slowly. Of course, he stepped out of the line. Not because he had to, but because escalating the moment would help no one. The officer stood beside the counter watching him carefully, as if expecting him to argue. But Marcus simply waited. Minutes passed. Passengers continued boarding. One by one they walked past him into the jet bridge. Some glanced at him curiously. Others avoided eye contact. Finally, Marcus spoke again. "Has the ticket been verified?" The gate agent sighed dramatically. "Sir, we're still checking. But you haven't scanned it yet." She tapped her keyboard without looking up. "We have procedures." Marcus nodded slightly. "I understand." Just then, an elderly woman approached the gate with difficulty, pulling a small suitcase. She struggled to lift it onto the conveyor belt. Without hesitation, Marcus stepped forward. "Let me help you with that." He lifted the bag gently and placed it on the belt. The woman smiled warmly. "Thank you, young man." Of course, the officer watched the interaction with mild annoyance. The gate agent, however, seemed unimpressed. "Sir, I told you to wait over there." Marcus gestured toward the woman. She needed help. The woman looked between them, sensing tension. "Is there a problem?" The gate agent forced a tight smile. No ma'am, everything is fine. But as the elderly woman walked toward the jet bridge, she turned back and gave Marcus a grateful nod. Marcus returned to his place beside the counter. Another 10 minutes passed. Boarding was nearly finished. Marcus looked toward the aircraft door. Then back at the agent. Will I be allowed to board my flight? She finally scanned the boarding pass. A loud beep echoed from the machine. Her eyes widened slightly, then quickly narrowed. Well, that's strange. Marcus raised an eyebrow. What is? She hesitated. The ticket is valid. The officer frowned. Then what's the issue? She leaned closer to the screen. It says he's a priority executive passenger. Marcus said nothing. The officer scratched his head. So he can board. The gate agent hesitated again. Then shook her head. No. Marcus looked at her calmly. May I ask why? She lowered her voice but not enough to avoid attention. Because something about this doesn't add up. Marcus folded his hands patiently. What doesn't add up? She gestured vaguely. You just don't look like someone who flies first class internationally. The words landed harder than she probably intended. A quiet gasp came from someone in line. Marcus didn't react, but something in his eyes shifted. Not anger, not humiliation, just disappointment. He reached into his jacket and pulled out his phone. The officer stepped closer. Who are you calling? Marcus smiled faintly. Someone who works with this airline. The agent rolled her eyes. Everyone suddenly knows someone when they can't board. Marcus dialed the number. The phone rang once, then twice. Then a voice answered immediately. Marcus. Good evening. Marcus turned slightly toward the window overlooking the runway. Good evening, Daniel. The agent glanced at the officer. See, Marcus continued calmly. I'm currently at gate 14 for flight 229. Everything okay? Marcus paused briefly. I'm being told I don't belong in the first-class boarding lane. There was silence on the other end. Then Daniel's voice changed. Excuse me. Marcus looked toward the counter again. The staff believes my ticket might not be legitimate. Another pause. Stay right there. Marcus slipped the phone back into his pocket. The officer smirked slightly. Did your friend fix it? Marcus simply said, we'll see. 2 minutes later, the gate agent's computer screen flashed. Then another alert appeared. Then another. She frowned. What the? The officer leaned over. What happened? Her face went pale. I just received a priority message from corporate. What does it say? She swallowed. It says, hold boarding. But boarding is finished. Another alert appeared. Then another. The officer read the message over her shoulder. Wait. This is coming from Northbridge Global Systems. The name meant nothing to most people in the terminal. But inside the airline industry, it meant everything. The officer looked confused. Why would they be contacting us? The gate agent slowly turned toward Marcus. He stood calmly by the window, watching planes taxi under the evening sky. Another supervisor rushed toward the gate. What's going on? The agent pointed to the screen. Corporate says we're under a system compliance audit. The supervisor's eyes widened. Right now, yes. He looked around nervously, then followed the agent's gaze toward Marcus. Who is that man? The officer shrugged. No idea. The supervisor walked toward Marcus cautiously. Sir, may I speak with you? Marcus turned. Yes. The supervisor cleared his throat. Are you, Mr. Marcus Carter? Marcus nodded. I am. The supervisor's face drained of color. Because at that exact moment, the realization finally hit. The quiet man they had kept waiting, the one they said didn't belong, was the CEO of the company that controlled the airline's entire digital operations system. And if he decided to, every single aircraft in their fleet could be grounded within minutes.